Hello and welcome back to a series of lectures related to botany. Today we will be discussing an important topic, that is the economic importance of algae. As you all know, algae are the microbial entities that prefer aquatic habitats, and in rare cases they also prefer terrestrial habitats. These algae in turn have different adaptability patterns also, that is, some algae prefer fresh waters, some prefer stagnant waters, some have a preference for flowing waters, some have a preference of those aquatic habitats where water remains partially contaminated or water remains fully contaminated. Now within these varied habitats, algae also play a vital role, either in the maintenance of the habitat conditions or sometimes even modification of these habitat conditions. And during these modifications, algae in turn are able to not only facilitate their survival but sometimes play a positive role where the habitats become more suitable not only for plants, animals, but sometimes even for humans. Despite being rated as the microscopic entities, these algae also have an important role in facilitating proper usage of biological resources or physical resources that facilitates the human survival or survival of dependent animals and plants. We have seen that wherever these algae grow, they also try to modify not only the status of that habitat, but sometimes try to induce into that habitat certain positive parameters, or sometimes, very rarely of course, try to induce into that habitat certain negative parameters. Obviously, these inductions are related to whatever activities are being carried out by individuals or colonies of these algae under varied habitats, and what is the impact of the habitat variabilities on the life cycle, on the productivity, on the adaptability, as well on the regeneration of these algae under varied conditions. Once we assess the positive and negative parameters, that enforce us to understand, is it a natural phenomenon or is it something that the algae are adapted to, so that their adaptability is properly facilitating modification of the habitat conditions which become suitable to them as a medium or as a substrate for survival, as well as sometimes facilitates multiplication at a scale at which the need is, or at which they can actually produce progenials which can in turn survive either in the community or in that particular habitat for as long as the particular individual alga deserves or that colony deserves. Once we look at the different roles played by algae, we can subcategorize them into various types. And among these types, the different parameters that we have followed are, number one, the general uses. That is, those uses of algae which are suitable for almost every living entity which try to consume a byproduct of algae or try to utilize something in which the algae are creating colonies or communities. Now these uses, primary uses, are, number one, the algae acting as primary producers. The primary producer means where in whatever habitat algae are growing, they are trying to produce oxygen through their metabolic activity, and this oxygen in turn is not only improving the respiratory activity of whatever community is living in that habitat, but also dependent entities will be able to survive. Now, among these, it has been seen that algae in the world as a whole contribute about 10% of the total oxygen which is useful in photosynthetic activities, or which is useful in actually facilitating the photosynthetic and respiratory activities of the dependent plants. Second is algae as food. Even though algae are microscopic entities, they are visible sometimes in detail under a microscope, yet it has been seen that in many countries, especially in East Asian countries, including Japan, the algae serve as a source of food for people who try to consume selected algae after being harvested from freshwater habitats and then subjected to different preparatory methods. And it has been seen that in this region, especially in Japan, the laminaria species is one of the major sources of a product known as kombu, which is consumed regularly by the Japanese people. Now this is actually an alga which has a preference for growing in stagnant waters, and its colonies are very dense and diverse, and these Japanese harvest it and prepare the kombu dish from it and then try to consume it as a replacement for whatever other food substances facilitates their survival. In addition to this, it has been seen that another plant, Porphyra, has in it, that is an alga has in it about 35% proteins, 45% carbohydrates, vitamin B and C and niacin, which is useful as an important source of the food that is being consumed by us regularly. That obviously means algae can be used as a replacement for those sources where the vitamin content, protein content, carbohydrate content is lesser than the content that we have seen in such alga. The third important use of the alga is as a fodder to cattle. These algae have been seen to actually facilitate proper development and improve productive potential of different animals which are fed certain specific alga, and among these Rhodomenia palmata is the alga which is actually fed as a fodder to the sheep in Norway, and it has been seen that productive potential of these sheep has improved by the consumption of this particular alga. Further, laminaria has also been fed as an important fodder for cattle, along with certain Palvitia species, Ascophyllum species, which have been seen to improve not only productivity but also improve the qualitative traits of these animals which are fed these alga. Next is the use of algae for pisciculture, that is where we try to commercially produce fish, and these fish in turn are in need of food, and it has been seen that if we feed them certain select algae, especially green algae, diatoms, some blue-green algae, and some algal materials harvested from freshwater bodies, the fish growth, fish multiplication is much better as compared to those habitats in which the quantity of the food or quantity of the nutrients is lower. Next is the use of algae in reclamation of alkaline or ooser soils, that is those soils which do not have a potential to facilitate normal cultivation of plants. In those soils it has been seen that if we add blue-green algae like nostoc, oscillatoria, cyclonema, spirulina, it has been seen that the addition of these select blue-green algae not only modifies the soil and decreases the alkaline content, but also facilitates the proper cultivation of whatever plants we want without having any side impact on the qualitative as well as quantitative characters of the plant that we commercially cultivate. The next important use of the alga is in the sewage treatment plants, that is where we want to convert the sewage into a reuseful or resynthesized product. That means we are converting the drainage sewage into a useful product by subjecting it to the treatment of certain algae which include Chlamydomonas, Cynidesmus, Chlorella, Pondorcina, etc., which have been seen to prefer living in contaminated water or sewage water, and after living in that water for a longer period of time, it has been seen that they can actually convert the sewage water into fresh water, and after chemical treatment, that sewage water can be used for direct consumption or even sometimes for irrigation purposes. That means alga can also play a vital role in converting wastewater or contaminated water into pure fresh water. Next important use of alga is as a research material. At present, for research purposes, alga material are being used primarily because their rate of multiplication is much faster, and for this usually Chlorella, Cynidesmus and Anacystis has been seen to be more useful because irrespective of variability in habitat, their multiplication is never getting halted or affected, and whatever number of these we use or we are in need of, we can under control conditions multiply them, and after multiplication assess whatever parameters we want to assess without affecting the number of the alga that we have produced. Next also is an important use, that is where alga have been used in space research. Now, among these, Chlorella and Syncococcus is an important alga which have been seen to have an important application in being used in spaceships, primarily because these alga have shown much better adaptability in not only in space but also in submarines. That is where the habitat variability does not affect their life cycle pattern, and at present many research institutions are carrying a work on the rate of multiplication, habitat adaptability of different alga in the conditions of saline habitats or in the conditions of the high altitudes, or sometimes even in space, to see what the impact of the habitat on their multiplication, development, or on their reproduction is. Next important use of algae is algae as a recreational use, that is where sometimes select algae can be used for cultivation under controlled conditions for recreational purposes, that is they can be used as decorative items. And among these, Tentophila has been seen to actually induce a reddish color into the water, which is sometimes stored in transparent containers, and this reddish color is sometimes seen to be more decorative than the normal water. That means we can sometimes use algae as a recreational or decorative item without altering either its life cycle or altering the habitat or the instrument in which we try to store these algae. Then next is the use of algae as fertilizers. That is where we try to actually add algae into cultivation fields so that their addition is modifying the productive potential of the soil by improving the organic nutrient content. Now among these, blue-green algae have been seen to act as biofertilizers, and nostoc, oscillatoria, cyctonemia, and cyprolina are used as commercially produced artificial biofertilizers, where they try to multiply them under controlled conditions, add them to the agricultural fields, and these agricultural fields have been seen to further improve their productivity potential. Turbine area is considered to be the most important alga which facilitates the growth of various algae, because on this palm tree, on this particular palm tree, we find that different algae grow, and these algae in turn negatively affect the contaminating species but also modify the habitat in terms of its fertility. Another important feature of algae is to improve the soil fertility as well as to reclaim the soils which have become non-productive. That is where we can sometimes improve soil fertility potential or sometimes convert a non-productive soil into a productive soil by the addition of specific algae, and among these nostoc, cyctonema, olocera, lingobia, microcoleus, Aphnatheca, and Anabina have been seen to play an important role in improving not only soil fertility but also sometimes converting a non-productive soil into a productive soil. That means we can actually shift algae from different habitats, and that shift will facilitate the conversion of the non-productive habitat into a productive habitat. The second important aspect of the algal importance is the use of algae as medicine. That is where either certain specific algae as such or algal products after being extracted from select algae is used in the preparation of medicine or directly used or consumed for modification of the different algae. Among the different algae, the important medicinal sources are, number one, brown algae. That is, those algae which are actually used for extraction of goiter medicine that will in turn overcome whatever problems one is suffering from, the pain of joints, etc. And it has been seen that this alga, that is brown alga, is an important source of iodine, which is actually the most important remedial measure of overcoming whatever goiter problems one is suffering from. The second important property of the alga is that it overcomes vermeous diseases. That is where anybody suffering from vermeous diseases is subjected to the treatment of the extracts of carolina, extract of digyna, extract of codium, extracts of alcidium, and extract of durvilla. These are freshwater algae. If they are subjected to extraction, their extract can help us to overcome vermeous diseases. Next important use of algae is where important sources like gelidium is used for treatment of kidney, gallbladder, and lung diseases, where the extract of this gelidium after being mixed with laminaria is used not only as a remedial measure but sometimes also used as a surgical tool where it facilitates the proper surgery without affecting the other organs which are in the vicinity of the organ for which the treatment is to be carried out. The other important property of the alga is antibiotic chlorine that is extracted from chlorella, which in turn has been at present used for manufacture of certain important antibiotic substances, which are consumed either in the form of tablets, in the form of capsules, in the form of syrups, or in some cases even in the form of the injections. That is where extract of chlorella can be used as a natural antibiotic without having any side effects on the body or on the organ of the patient who is recommended to consume this as an. The other important use of the algae is to overcome kidney and gallbladder diseases, and in these especially Acetobacteria major is considered to be the most important source of the medicine. However, here emphasis is that one should be able to harvest this Acetobacteria from its natural habitat, and after being harvested, subject it to extraction of whatever component it has without keeping it under storage conditions, because it has been seen that storage condition actually is negatively affecting the qualitative and quantitative traits of the active principle lying within this Acetobacteria. Next important source of a medicine from algae is alva, which has been seen to actually facilitate the treatment of glandular diseases. Another important discovery has been made where algae have been seen to actually promote growth of not only plants but sometimes even animals or certain specific parts of animals. It has been seen that Formedium tenue has an important property of actually inducing increase in height of the rice plant as well as increase the productive potential of the rice plant if this particular alga is grown or forced to grow in the paddy cultivation fields. That means certain alga can not only facilitate the improvement in soil fertility but also increase the height as well as productive potential of the rice plants. That obviously means that this is a natural fertilizer which is improving qualitative and quantitative traits of rice plant, in which there is no side effect on the parameters which are normally facilitating the growth of rice. In Japan, another important discovery has been made where Spirogyra has been used to prepare or synthesize the lens paper, which is actually used for cleaning lens of artificially manufactured glasses or sometimes even the lens of the human eye, without having any side impact on the vision or on the line's normal structure. Another important use of algae in medicine is that certain blue-green algae, green algae, red algae can synthesize as well as deposit calcium carbonate on the substratum, which automatically improves the potential of the soil to synthesize or to produce limestones. Now, limestones have an important commercial potential. Now, Cyanophyceae is an alga which has been seen to cause contamination of water. That is, they act as water contaminants, and if that water is consumed by humans, it can have side effects on the health of that particular person. But in order to purify that water, one can use Laminaria, another alga, which can not only overcome whatever contamination of the water has been carried out, but overcome also whatever disease has been initiated by this Cyanophycean member on the health of the consumer, and automatically depict that Laminaria has an impact of overcoming whatever negativity or whatever side effect have been caused by that alga on the human who have consumed that water. Other and the last important use of the alga commercially is, in terms of medicine, is to help us tracing the high organic wastes which can be useful in synthesizing important medical components or medicinal components. These include members of Anabina, members of Oscillatoria, members of Chlamydomonas, members of Chlorella, members of Euglena, and members of Liplocensis. That is, these algae can help us to depict where the high organic waste is like, and we can extract that waste and use that waste for synthesis of important medical components which can be used in the manufacture of medicinols without having any side effects on the consumer or on the health of the consumer or on the organ of the consumer as such. That means in medicine, algae also have an important role to play, but for that selection, one must know exactly what the alga is and what is the stage of its collection and what are the protective parameters one has to follow. Next important use of the alga is in the synthesis of antibiotics. It has been seen that there are certain antibiotics like chlorelin that is obtained from an alga known as chlorella, which is used for manufacture of an antibiotic which can actually help us to protect plants against certain pathogens. That means we are using a plant product as a remedial measure against the pathogens, wherein we have not to synthesize it but subject that select alga to extraction process, and after extraction use that as a antipathogenic material, so that this antibiotic is useful in protecting different plants or different commercially cultivated plants against the invasion or infection caused by these pathogens. In addition to these, we have seen that certain other important algae can be used, which include Pseudomonas, Mycobacterium. Laminaria is used as the most modern tool of synthesis of these antibiotics, and at present it is also being used for inducing abortion. This completes the third important role of algae. The fourth important role of algae is the role it plays in the industries. That is where one can actually use naturally available algae in manufacture of certain components which are industrially valuable, and these include, number one, the alginates. Now, alginates are actually synthesized by using algae like Macrocystis, Laminaria, Ascophyllum, and Lysonia, which actually are products where the alginate is actually variable in terms of concentration, in terms of quality, in terms of quantity. Iodine is an important component of almost all the manufacturing units, and it has been seen that algae of 505C are the basic materials or basic components which facilitate the generation or synthesis of this iodine. Among these, Laminaria, Echlonia, Icenia are the important algae. These actually facilitate not only synthesis of iodine by these algae, but also facilitate the conversion of the normal minerals within the soil into iodine components, which can be, after extraction, used for commercial purposes, where their utility is at par with some of the synthesized biochemical products. These specific algae, one can easily determine what the potential of these algae is without having any side impact on these algae. In addition to these, we have agar-agar, which is also having an industrial role. It is extracted from Gelidium. We have coragine, which is extracted from Chondrus species. Now, apart from these, we also have the last role of algae, that is the negative role it plays. That is where algae can actually impact directly those plants or those living entities which are living in that habitat, which are, number one, many blue-green algae actually produce toxic compounds which affect the plants growing in that habitat. Phycocyanin pigments that are produced by blue-green algae have been actually seen to have a negative impact on the humans also. We have the consumption of gynolox actually having a direct effect on the human as well as animal health. We have members of Cyanophyceae, Basilurophyceae, Chlorophyceae, Euglenoophyceae, Dinophyceae, and Chrysophyceae having a destructive effect on the water storage tanks, which in turn affects directly those who consume that water. We have filamentous algae having a direct effect on the eutrophication of lakes, that is where whatever other plants or microbes are surviving are also affected negatively. And lastly, we have members of Cyanophyceae which have been seen to cause poisoning of the animals if they consume them directly or if they consume the water in which these Cyanophyceae are dominantly seen. That means predominantly algae have an important role which is commercially useful to us, but they can also have negative roles where one must first assess what can be the suitable parameters to overcome these negativities. I hope that in future you will try to assess the direct and indirect negative and positive effects of algae so that you can yourself as well as inform others what are the positive and negative contributions that are naturally induced or produced by these algae in the habitat surrounding us. Thank you.